Hello, everybody. Welcome to the third episode of the second season of the Leaf Collectivo. With me, as every week, is Mr. Harley. Wes, how you doing?
Hello.
I just expect, I don't know why I expect, one day you're going to smile and, I don't know, like be like super cheerio. Like, but yeah,
It's
not,
just
not,
not
not
me, that's
today.
it. Yeah, that's
uh,
fine.
right. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like we need to rename this season as all of the things that can go wrong will go wrong, and we're kind of giving you the hints of how to avoid them. Uh, but and on that line, and maybe the reason we do this is because we want to empower everybody out there to kind of like think through the things that are not so obvious. On today's episode, we're going to be speaking about things from a web store perspective that can actually hinder or break your performance. We're going to cover the basic stuff at the beginning, just to remind everybody. I mean, oftentimes the obvious needs reminding because they're not obvious. And then we're going to go over a handful of things that we've seen in the past that have had a negative impact on the performance of campaigns. And oftentimes people don't know about this, or yeah, it's not as obvious, or it only becomes obvious later, unfortunately, when the impact has been done. And I think on today's episode we're going to be focusing on that bit. We're going to try to turn things around over the next few episodes. We have a few ones greatly planned, but these three ones, especially leading up to Black Friday, are important. So let's start with the obvious, Wes. Like, what are the obvious things that brands should remind themselves on, in terms of like what can go wrong or can have a negative impact on your performance?
Yeah. So I think the first one would be a slow website, really obvious, or it's not responsive and doesn't look good, or the experience is poor on mobile. Most of your traffic for most of the brands out there, most of the traffic they get into their site is from mobile. So whereas everything might look fine on desktop and it might load well and load quickly on desktop, the same might not be said on mobile. There's a few like places that you can check the performance of your website, right? There's like Lighthouse and PageSpeed, like some Google tools that can give you a score for how your website loads. And there's a bunch of stuff there, core web vital stuff that you might just need to look into. There's definitions for those that are pretty straightforward, but loads of it includes things like how your content renders. So if you've got images on your site that are like 5 MB, whatever, like really high res images or really high res video, lots of video, it can slow down the page. That stuff can just have a direct impact on conversion rate. Pretty obvious, but that conversion rate affects the performance of your ads because you're sending people from your ads to the website. It's slow, people bounce, have a poor experience, etc. All that stuff as well, slow loading, or it can also affect tracking. If the tracking's slow to load, and if that's everything, you've got loads of apps that are all trying to load on the homepage straight away. All that stuff, all those scripts that are trying to load, they're all going to be in a queue. Basically, I forgot what that's called. It's called something very specific in Core Web Vitals, but it's like how much time one task has got to wait before another task has been completed. It can affect tracking. It can affect all sorts of stuff. And there's ways around you can mitigate that. Think of it as like lazy loading for all the scripts that run on your website. You don't need them all to load all at once. And if the impact tracking, that's a big one because tracking needs to be as real time as possible, and all those events need to be captured. So yeah, the speed of your website through the content and the apps that you've got loading on there. What's another? Your stock. So inventory, if you're low on stock of your best sellers and there's wait times for that stuff, or you've got inventory where you've sold out of popular sizes, all that stuff, you've just run a sale, you've sold out of, you're really low on stock we had this with the sofa brand. They were low on stock for their best-selling sofa, and the whole thing about the brand was delivering sofas quickly instead of waiting weeks. But because they were low on stock, people were ordering, and then they might have to wait weeks now to get get us over. That impacted the conversion rate of the ads by, I don't know, a lot, a lot. And so we had to put rules on the feed to say if the stock drops below X, then don't serve these ads, don't serve this particular product for this. But even just like, if we're sending people to a collection page or a product detail page, and that particular color of that item or those sizes are mainly sold out, it will fundamentally impact the conversion rate of that ad, and that could be your best performing ad. So a heads up from the brand to the agencies, but also from the agencies to the brand to say, like, if you see something in terms of stock or bestsellers, or that you're going to get low on stock or sell out, then just give as much notice to each other as possible so you can manage that either through rules on the feed or having some other ads that go to other collection pages instead of individual product pages, whatever it might be. Yeah, I think those are the main ones really. The performance of the site, and then the stock level and stock performance. Let's say I think those are the really obvious ones.
Yeah, there is something as well that I think, especially with page speed, that people um, might not necessarily take into consideration, and I think we briefly spoke about this in the last couple of episodes, but it's the number of apps that you have installed on your store. And this has happened, with some of our, to some of the brands in our portfolio where, one of the few things that we, try to suggest to the brands that work with us to do is a speech optimization work upfront. And, where we're going to go over and we fine tune all these different things, like was I saying, lazy loading, image sizing, optimization, and make sure that we can get it as good as possible, as close to the 100% in the core vitals as possible it is. But something that we have seen is that despite of us going and doing all that work, say right now, uh, in a few months or in a few weeks, if you go and install apps or remove apps, then suddenly the speed of the site will be affected. And having a good hygiene on apps is super important. Making sure that at least quarterly you go over all the apps, make sure that the apps that you have running on your store are actually fulfilling, its mission, are important to be used. I mean, treat it almost as technical debt, but also as cost, right? Anything that
That,
you
that
add is going to have a cost.
that thing right there, technical debt. So that it's a product development term, and we're a product development company. So for us, tech debt is that balance between pushing features and then actually fixing bugs, but even going one further than that and actually going, right, there's like some cleanup of the code repository that we do. There's some stuff that we don't need anymore that we just need to, because all that code is being loaded, and the more code that's left in there that's kind of like dormant, or the code's useless, it can just add in the potential for bugs. And so if you have all this stuff, this build-up of shit, basically, like eventually you're just going to get an increase in the amount of bugs you get through development. So always having good QA process on development, and then having some time set aside from your developers to handle technical debt will always impact the site positively if done properly. It will either make the site faster to load, it will reduce the amount of bugs, and these could be UI bugs, back-end bugs, checkout bugs, and all this has a positive or negative impact on your performance marketing campaigns, because they're all based on conversion rate from site visit to or ad click or whatever to conversion. So all that stuff, it's got a benefit on the ecosystem, and your email, your other channels as well, email marketing. But yeah, I think we can probably go into some more specific examples now, right?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe like continuing from stock management, we've seen examples of brands hiding product pages rather than putting them out of stock when you cannot manage that. I mean, there's going to be times, and probably more often than not, where you're going to run out of stock, and there are good best practices to follow on that. But it also has a major impact on performance, right?
Yeah, so we've got some technology called Watcher, that watches the conversion tracking, but it also watches for things like 404s and all that kind of stuff and downtime on the website. We saw one of our clients just a massive spike throughout August and September in 404, a few hundred 404 pages. And at the same time, we'd been struggling with retargeting was an issue. It was difficult to get retargeting to perform. It should perform significantly better than prospecting. And we've got all the proper exclusions and all the proper targeting in the accounts and all the proper attribution stuff and creative and all that stuff. There's no reason it shouldn't work. Sometimes it doesn't work retargeting because maybe you're a reseller brand and you're selling products more expensive than another retailer. So people come to your website, they're like, oh, I like that. Then they go and search on Google and they find a product cheaper somewhere else. It's actually harder to get those people back than to get them to buy first time when they visit your website. Lead generation is also, if people come and they don't fill in that form, it's more expensive to get them to come back and fill the form in. So retargeting is actually more expensive generally for lead gen campaigns. But when you're struggling with lead gen, it might be an issue with the pages or the URL. Something's happening where you've maybe had a product page and then you've hidden that product page but not put it out of stock, but there's a whole bunch of people who've visited that product page in the past. And then if we're doing dynamic retargeting so that it retargets people who've left stuff in their basket or they've viewed a particular page, we might be then trying to retarget them to a URL that no longer exists. Or that person can actually just go, oh, I'll just type in that brand, and then it comes up, this is the last page you visited, and they click on that and try and go back to that page to make the purchase for you days. And the page is a 404, it doesn't exist because you've hidden it, and then it's not available. You can't navigate to it on the website. So if you're going to do that, you need to make sure that you're setting that stuff as out of stock, because it still might even be in the product feed and be pulling that stuff in. But then when you click on it, you go into a 404 page and it's not, it's not following best practice in terms of how the feeds are going to still pull in on all this information. Or we're going to be, people have got cache, so locally stored stuff on their website, and we could be, they go back to a website. It happens sometimes with territory targeting as well. If you somehow visit like the German website from because you're on holiday and then you come home, it's going to send you back there and then retarget you to the UK, and that's all cache-based stuff. So all that stuff, we've seen it have a really detrimental impact on retargeting. And if there's a lot of pages, all of a sudden you go, right, we've sold out of all this stock, and then we're getting a whole bunch of new products and new stock in, or we're getting the same ones but with a different material or a slightly different size because the other ones were like badly sized and the returns were quite high. All of a sudden you can get a couple of hundred pages that people are being retargeted to, and they're just 404s. So really you need proper redirects on those pages. So there's good 404s and bad 404s, right? A bad 404 would be, this page no longer exists, and then there's no way to click on a link to go to a relevant page. And Google would like that. This page no longer exists, but you've come for this product, but go here to see this collection, and it's a relevant product, and you get to where you want. But so many times the redirects and the way that companies handle 404s just means that the retargeting, loads of the retargeting, just go into all these like bad 404s, these bad pages. And it takes a while, once you've fixed it, it takes a while to flush out all those retargeting audiences that have had a bad experience, that have gone to a page and the conversion rate has dipped. And once that stuff's fixed and then we move past it, you just see an increase in the performance of retargeting, even if you're not increasing or decreasing the budgets at the top or bottom of funnel. You will get better performance from retargeting.
Yeah, and on a similar note, there is personalization apps where you're going to go personalize a product. You're probably looking at a product, you want to personalize it, put your name, put your make it yours, and then you leave it there, and then you go somewhere else. And some apps will build a temporary product of that. You might personalize it, add it to your cart, but you don't check out. So that product temporarily exist. Uh, but if you don't have, your tracking properly done, um, you drop, and then it's going to try to retarget you with that product. But that product might not exist by then, and then again you're sent to a 404. I think we've seen this, on a couple of occasions with personalization apps, and I think again it's something that you would not think will have an impact, but it actually does.
Yeah, especially if you're running a campaign around personalization. So, there's like hundreds of thousands of impressions going out, and you're reaching a lot of people and sending a lot of people to these pages. It creates dynamic pages. I mean, this costs us a fortune in processing for, we do data warehousing, and this just it cost us a fortune. I think it spiked our costs for that one client by like 100% or something within a 3-week period. Bit of a lesson for us, but yeah, again, retargeting people to pages that then no longer exists, and also that's in their cache. It's on there. They try and go back to it, and it no longer exists. And again, it's affecting the conversion rate of the site. And that conversion rate, loads of those people, they're linked. There's a chemical trail from Meta, from Google to those people that have visited your website. And all as Meta and Google see is, oh, the conversion rate's dropped. So we'll go and target, and it'll mess with the algorithm. Then goes, right, that profile of that customer or this thing is not working. I'll go and spend the money somewhere else. And it's not. It's just, and then it all needs kind of recalibrated. I also think all this page hiding, if you're hiding pages, I think Gil mentioned this just before we went on air, check the ranking of these pages that you're going to hide. They could rank really, really well in Google. And if you're hiding all these pages or getting rid, there'll be a way, especially through redirects, to maintain the SEO integrity and authority and ranking of those pages. And that can have a huge effect on the performance of paid media and a huge effect on the revenue performance of the business.
Yeah,
It's
I mean, it's
all
something we were discussing this earlier, right? And especially when you're doing migrations, from one theme to the next, or from one engine to another, it's understanding how your site actually is seen, perceived, and performs from an organic point of view, from an SEO point of view. Um, Oftentimes we believe that we're improving things, but we don't even know where the baseline lies. And I think making sure that you're as mindful as possible in the changes or improvements that you believe you're going to be making, and then being able to measure that, having a baseline, making the change, then looking whether that change actually improve or not, things is going to be super important. Changing URLs is another one. Again, things that so oftentimes, the URLs are changed by the apps, and there might be a setting that says don't change the URL when I update the product. But we've seen apps that anytime you make a slightly change in the product, it could be the product description, it can be improving on an image, and then suddenly changes the URL, and then automatically retargeting, but also any kind of SEO that you could have built on that, gets flush.
yeah. We've seen, changing URLs, it affects the product feeds because the product feeds they take time to refresh. So if you've got your product feeds and they refresh every 24 hours or something, and you change the URLs of your fit, again, people are just going to be going to dead links or being retargeted to dead links over 24 hours. If you're spending 10 grand a day, that can be a lot of people. That can be pretty meaningful. If your feeds don't refresh every 24 hours and they refresh once a week, or you're updating them from a spreadsheet and you just don't do it for a couple of weeks, like, you could have an even bigger problem. If they're refreshing every hour, yeah, it's less of an issue. But if you've got hard-coded ads, if you've got ads loaded into Meta or Google with hard-coded links saying just send these people to this particular page, and you change that URL, those hard-coded links aren't going to work anymore. You're going to have a redirect on that. So we've had that recently where URLs changed on all the
Best
best-selling
performing ads.
products, all the best-selling products, and therefore all the best-performing ads. And then we just see them tank like one day to the next, this step change in performance, and we're like, what's happening? And then you start clicking, and you do your due diligence, you do an audit on your own stuff, right? So you're clicking on all the ads, checking the destination. Oh, 404, right, how long, right, let's check all those, right, yeah, okay, all the best performing ads are now going to 404s. Speak to the client, what's happened? Oh yeah, sorry, we changed the URLs. So yeah,
And
that
you have to
stuff.
remember, it's not just about going and updating the URL. It's the fact that you're you're sending the ads back to learning. All the goodness that those ads could have had is they're flush, right? And it's gone.
Yeah,
Um,
we've got to we've got to change the, what we were. Even if it has a redirect on it as well, it could change it. It might not perform quite as well. So there's certain, yeah. Again, if you're going to do that, then you've just got to be able to plan for it. You're going to have to, say there's no way around it, and you've got to change your URL. You've got to do this stuff. Then just do some due diligence on how it's going to impact the product feeds that are going to, say, Google and Meta, and then if there's any hard-coded links in any ads that are going there, and the performance of those, if those are best performers, then you're going to have a serious plan to kind of circumvent it or phase them out or something like that, and then kill the page and run them side by side or something. But it can have major impact on the performance of
yeah,
your
and
ads.
something to bear in mind, right? I mean, you can be listening to this podcast or watching us on YouTube and thinking, bloody hell, like it's a lot of work, and I'm being put all these guardrails around. But obviously, it all depends on how much money you're pushing, how much um, your site has been going on for, and whatever. The longer you've been, the more money you spend, the more guardrails you're gonna have to have around. Especially because any of these little things that we're talking, and some of them are not so little, will have a knockout effect that is gonna take time to get back at. And I think this is the bits where the constant collaboration, we were talking about this in the last episode, the constant communication. It's not just a theme update, right? And this is something that we communicate a lot to our brands. It's like we need to know at, as much upfront or with as much notice as possible any changes, however small you believe that change is. You might not know the knockout effect that something like that will have.
Yeah, the amount of
Um,
times I've spoken to our CTO, Helga, and said something like, oh, that'll be quick to do that in the product, or that'll take ages, or yeah, it shouldn't have much impact. And the amount of times that Helga will come back and just be like, actually, it's much easier than you think to do that, or actually, that's way more complicated, like building a form. People think forms on websites are like easy to build and made to, like, they're really tricky. And everyone's like, oh, well, it's just a form. But it's tricky. There's integrations. You want to send the information somewhere. There's all the different fields, mobile, desktop, different browsers. It's pretty complex stuff. And if you're not a developer or web developer or software engineer, even somebody in my position who's been working with very, very senior engineers for a long time, well over a decade now, and my intimate knowledge of product development and software development, I don't know. I don't know because I'm not a coder. I do not have that. I have a serious missing piece of the jigsaw there. And you've got an idea like, oh, well, we've done it in the past and it only took 5 days. And it's like, well, yeah, this is a totally different website and the app's been updated and it's a completely different beast to what it was a year ago. So you just better just to do the due diligence on that stuff, especially anything to do with product pages, URLs, changing. Imagine you do something on your website and it skips the cart and goes straight to the checkout. Imagine now you're not sending 100 abandoned cart emails a day. You're only sending 20. And
or you're
so,
sending or you're sending those emails with the wrong URLs because they have expired and no longer
yeah,
exist.
imagine the impact on your email, the revenue that's being driven from email, where loads of that revenue is abandoned cart emails, bringing people back into the site, and all of a sudden you are no longer sending them because you are now skipping the cart. That can affect email. It can affect the size of the audiences that you are remarketing to on Google and Meta. And these are high intent, like they've added something specific to the cart and you can send out a specific ad saying, you've showing them what they've left in the cart, 10 items, all different sizes and colors, and you can show them this personalized thing, and all of a sudden you've reduced the size of that audience by 80%. Imagine the impact on your
Or
growth.
even things like unintended consequences of changes. We had an example where we were running a lead gen campaign leading up to a specific event, uh, and most ecom websites will have a pop up to get people to subscribe to a newsletter and whatnot. And we saw one campaign going from one day to the next and drop, like tank completely. Uh, and we thought, what's going on? We went to the landing page and realized that they had made a change to the newsletter banner, and they had removed the exclusion from the lead gen page, which meant that people were landing on the lead gen form, but they were being greeted by a subscribe to our newsletter form,
Yeah,
or
pop
pop
up
up,
over the
and
top of the form you actually want
and
without
people
you.
were
Yeah.
filling up that form, thinking that that was the form for the lead gen bit, and then just dropping afterwards. And so we saw a tank on the lead gen, but then a spike on newsletter subscriptions. And again, right? I mean, the problem with that is that has a knockout effect, because then the audiences and the people that had been sent to those pages that the channels thought match the targeting criteria, because they didn't convert, then they're going to be removed from, they're going to affect the targeting criteria of the algorithms, when in reality they actually did. So again, you're going to have to end up probably relaunching the campaigns, so that now you're kind of like resetting the algorithm so that you can get the learnings back on, or you're going to have to do offline conversions to kind of like re-attribute all of those changes to the events. No matter what, there's going to be an impact, and there's going to be waste of media spend.
Yeah. I mean, the list is endless, changes you make, and I think the final parting message is that it's an ecosystem. If you do something, I'll just end with one example. So we have a client where, and we've seen this across multiple clients, declining traffic from organic, and this isn't like we're not reading the data right in GA, and like that organic is actually going somewhere else or whatever. It's a decline in revenue and traffic from organic, Google organic search, and then actually like a reduction in blended performance, in blended return on ad spend, even though say Meta and Google are actually performing incrementally slightly better and they've been pretty stable, but there's all of a sudden like 70 grand a month missing in revenue. And when we look into that, again, changes to URLs, changes to the website, hiding over 18 months, hiding tons of high ranking, high value pages and not having the redirects and not protecting the SEO, or removing SEO rich content like, oh, we don't like that content at the top of the collection page, but actually it's been put there for a reason, or we'll get rid of all that content at the bottom of the collection page, or we'll have less text on our product detail pages, and you're removing all that goodness. And if you keep doing that over and over again, over a year, 18 months, you could half your organic traffic and you could wipe out, which means you're getting less in-market customers, organic in-market customers, searching for generic stuff, not your brand stuff. And that's feeding your email remarketing. It's feeding your remarketing on Meta. It's feeding your remarketing on Google. And these are really high value, in-market, high converting audiences. And not only that, they actually train your pixels and train the paid media algorithms in what an in-market, ready to buy, new customer prospecting customer looks like for your brand, and it helps to inform targeting. So they imagine the more organic in-market cold prospects you can get visiting your site that are converting really well, just the better the whole ecosystem works. But if you are systematically through, and you don't know this, but you're just systematically removing all this SEO goodness and all that SEO, all that organic traffic, your other channels are going to have to pick up the slack, and they're going to have to work much harder to deliver value, and you're just going to be wiping out revenue for for your business, and it takes a while to then turn that stuff back around. And it's this ecosystem they all affect. If you send a bunch of poor traffic in from Meta, then your abandoned cart rate is gonna spike, but then the actual conversion rate of your emails is going to be low because the traffic quality is poor. The traffic quality is poor, so that your Google remarketing and Meta remarketing is also going to be affected by it. And then if these people are going to your website and they're bouncing really quickly and not buying anything, Google doesn't like that either, because your dwell time is going to drop, and that is, it is one of the ranking factors for SEO. So it's all this kind of symbiont like ecosystem. So yeah, I think if you're going to do anything in terms of changes on the website, especially the ones we've mentioned, I think just run it past your marketing people, specifically your performance marketing people.
Right. So that's the episode for today. As you can see, we've been focusing on things that does impact performance, that has an impact on your business as usual, on the results. Today being the changes that go onto web, or those that the little things that you believe might not have an impact, but in reality it does. So I think the best advice that we can give you is, bring everybody to the table. Have a proactive communication with everybody, even in the things that you don't think there's going to be an impact. It's better to hear that, yeah, go on, there's no impact, thanks for the heads up, than figuring out that it actually did, and the impact are going to be more costly to recover from. As always, I'm Gil, with me is Wes, and we hope that today's episode brought a little bit of value outside of the obvious, and allows you to have much better performance, especially now going into the holiday season. Wish you all the best on this period as you start launching your holiday campaigns, and really looking forward to the next episode. Bye, everybody. Cheers.